The stars above had always been silent watchers, distant and cold, until the day the sky itself seemed to shift. Shadows stretched across the horizon, massive shapes gliding through the atmosphere with a precision that made every human heartbeat stutter. They came not as explorers, not as diplomats, but as warriors. Alien creatures whose very existence had been whispered about in theory and speculation descended upon Earth, claiming mastery of war. Entire cities crumbled in seconds, their technology and strategy far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. And yet, for all their power, there was a sense that they were testing something, probing a world they had never truly understood. Among the terrified crowds and the remnants of shattered civilization, one man stood out. He was not a soldier, not trained in tactics or battle formations. In fact, he was ordinary in every way, an engineer by trade, a thinker by habit, someone who had spent his life solving problems in quiet labs rather than on battlefields. But in a world suddenly ruled by invaders who moved with deadly grace, he became something extraordinary, something no alien had anticipated. The man had seen too much destruction to stand idle. He had witnessed the precision of alien warfare, the way entire units could be dismantled in minutes, the way their weapons could tear through steel like paper. And yet, rather than fleeing or surrendering, he made a decision that would change everything. He began to fight back not with brute force, but with his mind, his ingenuity, and a growing understanding of the battlefield that seemed to make him more than human. As days turned into nights of relentless conflict, rumors spread among survivors that he had somehow become a living battlefield, every part of his body and mind a weapon and a strategy combined. The aliens had believed themselves untouchable. They had conquered planets before, crushed civilizations without hesitation. Humanity was just another footnote in their catalog of victories. They had mastered war in every measurable sense, but they had never faced a man who could adapt, evolve, and turn himself into the very chaos they brought with them. Every attack they launched seemed to feed his knowledge, every maneuver sharpened his instincts. The more they pressed, the more he transformed, and the more the aliens realized that their mastery might not be as absolute as they thought. Even as this man's presence began to shift the tide in pockets of resistance, ordinary humans found themselves drawn into his story. Civilians who had once hidden in basements and bunkers were inspired by the idea that one person could hold a line, that ingenuity and courage could defy an empire of war-hardened invaders. Communities began to organize, using scraps of old technology and human resilience as weapons, learning from his example. Hope became contagious, a fragile but growing force in a world that had all but surrendered to fear. But with each success came escalating danger. The aliens noticed his adaptation and began changing their strategies, probing his weaknesses with an intensity that no ordinary human could survive. Shadows of colossal war machines loomed over cities, lasers sliced through streets, and creatures with intelligence and power far beyond human comprehension sought him out. And yet, he did not falter. Instead, he seemed to anticipate their every move, almost as if the battlefield itself had become a part of him, every pulse, every breath, every thought connected to the ongoing war. As the first chapter of this war unfolded, the tension reached a point that could not be ignored. Humanity had never faced an enemy like this, and the man at the center had never faced a challenge of such scale. Questions loomed over the horizon. Could one human truly stand against an alien force that had mastered destruction? Was it possible for human ingenuity and willpower to bend the course of war in ways even invaders could not predict? And most importantly, what price would he pay for becoming more than human, turning his very being into a battlefield where life and death collided in ways the universe had never seen? The night sky burned with streaks of alien fire, and the man stood alone on a crumbling rooftop, surveying a city that had become both his domain and his trap. Below, the invaders prepared their next strike, confident that this time they would crush any resistance. But up above, a spark of defiance burned brighter than any weapon the aliens possessed. And in that moment, humanity held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when an ordinary man became the extraordinary line between survival and annihilation. The war had begun, and the world had no idea just how different the rules had become. The man didn't fully understand how he had reached this point. A week ago, he had been an ordinary citizen, navigating a city of steel and glass with the familiar hum of human life. Now the hum had been replaced by the thunder of alien engines and the electric tension of war. Memories of his past life, quiet nights, the comfort of routine, the laughter of friends felt distant, almost unreal, as if they belonged to someone else. The transformation had not been sudden. It had crept in quietly, driven by necessity, sharpened by the alien threat, and cemented by the desperate instinct to survive. The city around him was a maze of ruin and opportunity. Buildings that once housed offices, homes, and schools were now skeletons of concrete and steel, some still smoldering from alien bombardments. Among the debris, humanity clung to life, scavenging for food, water, and anything that could be turned into a weapon. The man moved through this chaos with a precision that seemed unnatural. His mind tracked every explosion, every movement, every sound. He understood patterns, the rhythm of alien attacks, the way their drones flitted between targets, the gaps in their formations. In doing so, he became a living map of conflict, a node of strategy in a city that had been reduced to a battlefield. And yet, he wasn't alone in his awareness. Around him, people began to notice his presence, whispering about the way he seemed untouchable, about the almost preternatural way he avoided traps and predicted strikes. Survivors gravitated toward him, drawn by a mixture of awe and hope. Among them were engineers who repurposed old machinery, medics who patched wounds under impossible conditions, and ordinary citizens who suddenly found courage they didn't know they had. Together, they formed a small network, learning to move, strike, and survive in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated. Even as he became a symbol, the man carried the weight of uncertainty. Each encounter with the aliens left him altered, physically and mentally. Bruises healed quickly, reflexes sharpened, and his perception of space and movement grew more acute. Sometimes, late at night, he would feel the alien intelligence probing his mind not with words, but with strategies, calculations, and a curiosity that felt almost alive. They were studying him as much as he was studying them. He didn't know if this made him stronger or more vulnerable. Each time he learned from an attack, he wondered what price his body and mind were paying in return. Back in the shadows of the ruined city, small acts of resistance began to ripple outward. Humans, inspired by his defiance, sabotaged alien supply lines, disrupted communications, and set traps using technology scavenged from wreckage. Simple tools became weapons. Ordinary streets became choke points where humans could force the aliens to confront unpredictability. For the first time, the invaders faced a resistance that was not just physical but intellectual, adaptive, and deeply human. The man watched these developments closely, teaching, observing, and refining tactics as the stakes climbed higher. The aliens themselves were not a uniform force. Some were intelligent strategists, calculating, patient, and precise. Others were machines of instinct, instruments of destruction without hesitation or empathy. Together, they formed a hierarchy, each level coordinating attacks, defending assets, and exploiting weaknesses, and yet, even their coordination had cracks. They had never encountered an opponent who could turn survival into a constant evolution. In trying to anticipate the man's actions, they revealed glimpses of their own patterns he could exploit. At night, when the fires of battle dimmed to distant glows, he would wander the ruined streets alone. The silence was deceptive. Every sound, every shadow seemed amplified, as if the city itself were watching and waiting. He would examine abandoned vehicles, crumbling walls, and shattered communication towers, imagining how each piece of rubble could become a tool, a weapon, a decoy. In these moments, he wasn't just fighting aliens, he was rewriting the rules of survival, redefining what it meant for a human to stand against a power that had dominated countless worlds. Yet even as humans adapted, the question of scale loomed. How long could one man and the handful of survivors around him resist an enemy with superior technology, superior numbers, and centuries of experience in war? Every victory carried a cost, every move was shadowed by danger, and every night brought the possibility that the aliens would strike in ways no one could predict. The tension was constant, a tightrope stretched over the abyss of annihilation. And somewhere beyond the city, the larger alien forces were mobilizing. Commands passed through ranks, strategies shifted, and intelligence reports marked the man as a significant anomaly. He was no longer just a human survivor, he had become a threat to their assumption of control, a variable that could not be ignored. Their curiosity was turning into determination, and determination into obsession. The city waited, breathing in cautious suspense, while the man prepared. Each day brought new challenges, each night new questions, and each encounter with the aliens revealed a world of possibilities that defied human comprehension. One question lingered above all: could a single human mind embody, shaped by necessity and resilience, really change the outcome of a war the universe had deemed already won? And as the first light of dawn crept over the ruined skyline, a faint hum of alien engines signaled that the next attack was coming closer, faster, more calculated than ever before. The man tightened his grip on the makeshift tools he carried, feeling the pulse of the city beneath his feet. The battlefield was alive, and so was he, but whether that would be enough to survive what was coming remained uncertain. The day began like any other in the shattered city, but there was no comfort in routine anymore. The aliens were never predictable, and the man knew better than anyone that every quiet morning carried the weight of impending violence. From the rooftops, he could see the shimmer of their scout drones gliding between ruined towers, scanning for life, for resistance, for him. Each movement was a calculation, every shadow a potential trap, and yet he moved with a rhythm that seemed to flow around their surveillance, almost as if the city itself conspired with him. Down below, pockets of survivors worked tirelessly to reinforce their positions. Small teams ventured into the wreckage to gather scrap metal, electronics, and even remnants of alien tech from downed drones. Engineers and medics coordinated silently, passing information through signals and gestures, careful to remain unseen. In the distance, faint explosions punctuated the morning haze raids, strikes, or tests of defenses. Nobody could say for certain. The man watched all of it, learning, adapting, and predicting. Every fragment of knowledge gained was another layer of the battlefield forming within him. Not everyone shared his vision. Fear ran deep, and panic could spread faster than hope. Some survivors doubted that a single human, no matter how clever, could change anything against an enemy that had mastered war across countless worlds. Arguments broke out over strategies, over which areas to defend, over whether to trust his plans. The man had to manage not just the aliens, but the fragile unity of the humans he led. Every word he spoke carried weight, every decision could spark hope or despair. It was a balancing act of survival and leadership, one that left him exhausted even before the aliens struck. Meanwhile, the aliens were far from static observers. Their scouts relayed data back to larger vessels hovering above the planet, and command nodes shifted strategy in response to the man's unpredictable tactics. Some alien commanders were fascinated by him, analyzing patterns, attempting to anticipate his next move. Others grew frustrated, their attacks failing, their machines destroyed by strategies they hadn't seen before. The man had become more than a nuisance. He was a puzzle, a dangerous variable in their meticulously controlled system of conquest. Amid this larger war, smaller stories of human courage and ingenuity unfolded. A young engineer rigged an abandoned subway tunnel into a trap that disabled several alien drones. A medic kept a hidden infirmary running in the basement of a crumbling library, tending to survivors too afraid to move. Ordinary people discovered extraordinary resourcefulness, inspired by the man's presence and his ability to turn even rubble into a weapon. Every act of resistance, no matter how small, added layers to the growing narrative of human resilience, a story that seemed almost impossible against the aliens' overwhelming might. Yet the stakes were growing. The aliens were adapting as quickly as he did, changing their formations, experimenting with new weapons, and probing deeper into the city's secrets. Shadows of massive war machines appeared on the outskirts, signaling larger assaults. The man could feel the tension in every street, in every abandoned corner, in every glance exchanged between survivors. Each day brought new challenges, and with each challenge came the risk that they might not survive long enough to see the next. Within him, the transformation continued. The longer he fought, the more his body and mind seemed to integrate with the battlefield. Reflexes sharpened, perception stretched, intuition deepened. He could anticipate alien maneuvers, sense the presence of danger before it arrived, and plan strategies almost instinctively, but with every enhancement came unease. He wondered how far he could push himself, how much of his humanity he could preserve while becoming something more, something that the aliens might see as unnatural, perhaps even a threat to their dominance. The aliens, for their part, began experimenting in new ways. Small infiltration teams tested defenses in the dead of night, probing weak points, capturing humans for study and attempting psychological warfare. Each time they struck, they revealed a sliver of their intelligence, a glimpse of strategy designed to destabilize and intimidate. And each time the man responded, weaving countermeasures, setting traps, and preparing for the inevitable escalation. The battlefield wasn't just physical anymore, it was psychological, a complex dance of wits, instincts, and survival. Among the humans, rivalries and alliances added another layer of tension. Some questioned the man's growing influence, suspecting him of becoming too dangerous to trust. Others clung to him, believing that only his unique abilities could give them a chance against the aliens. Subplots unfolded. A small group debated whether to strike alone against a distant alien outpost, risking their lives for a chance to save others. A medic secretly questioned if keeping certain survivors alive was worth the risk when resources ran thin. Every subplot intertwined with the central conflict, amplifying suspense and deepening the human dimension of the story. As night fell, the city transformed once again. The dim glow of fires illuminated ruined streets, and the faint hum of alien engines filled the sky. The man stood atop a partially destroyed skyscraper, surveying the maze below. Each light, each shadow, each sound told a story, a threat, or an opportunity. Somewhere in the distance, the alien forces were gathering, preparing their next assault, their largest yet. And in that moment, a chilling realization struck him. The next battle would not just test human ingenuity or courage. It would test the very limits of what one human could endure, what one mind could calculate, and what one soul could survive. The city held its breath, the aliens waited. And the man, transformed by war yet tethered to his humanity, braced for the storm that would determine the fate of everything he had fought to protect. The night had grown heavy over the ruined city, the kind of darkness that seemed to press down on everything, muting sound and bending perception. Fires from earlier skirmishes painted the streets in flickering red, casting elongated shadows that twisted like monsters in the debris. From his perch on a crumbling skyscraper, the man could feel the tension in every street, every alley, every shattered building. The aliens were moving slowly, deliberately, with an almost surgical patience, and he knew that tonight would not be another small raid. This would be their largest, most calculated strike yet. He could see the silhouettes first, creeping over the horizon like a tide of steel and light. Drones darted ahead, scanning for movement, while larger units carried weapons capable of leveling entire blocks. The alien intelligence had learned from him, adapted to the resistance humans had mounted, and now they approached like predators aware that their prey had evolved beyond expectation. Even his enhanced instincts couldn't fully anticipate the shapes their assault would take. Every nerve in his body hummed with alertness, a tight coil of readiness for the inevitable. Inside the pockets of survivors, tension ran even higher. Engineers tightened makeshift barricades, medics prepared emergency stations in hidden basements, and civilians armed with scavenged tools braced for what could be the final confrontation. Whispers filled the air, some of fear, some of hope, but all carried a shared sense of anticipation. The man had become more than a symbol. He was a center of strategy, a living hub of resistance, and everyone looked to him for the next move. The burden weighed heavily on him, yet he did not falter. Every decision had to be perfect, because a single mistake tonight could destroy everything. Even as he orchestrated the defense, small subplots unfolded. A pair of young scavengers, barely trained, were assigned to reroute alien patrols into traps that might hold them for precious minutes. A medic debated whether to risk leaving injured civilians to reinforce a critical choke point, knowing that every second mattered. These human threads, fragile and tense, wove together with the central conflict, making survival not just a matter of combat but of careful judgment, timing, and trust. The man had learned that humans, too, were weapons when used wisely, each person's courage multiplying the strength of the others. The alien forces advanced in waves, each movement precise, coordinated, and terrifyingly efficient. Machines with limbs sharper than any human blade swept down streets, while armored units fired energy blasts that reduced walls to rubble in moments. Drones hovered above, their scanning beams catching shadows and movement, probing for life with clinical precision. And yet, for all their mastery, they hesitated at points, probing carefully, adjusting strategies in response to the man's defenses. He had anticipated much of this, setting traps, laying signals, and preparing contingencies, but there was always the unknown. Always the variable he could not predict. Time stretched, moments heavy with anticipation. Every sound, every flicker of light could signal attack or distraction. The city itself seemed to pulse with tension, waiting. The man moved silently, checking barricades, signaling survivors, calibrating his mind to the rhythm of battle. He felt almost symbiotic with the city now, each movement of the alien forces a note in a growing symphony of war that he alone could conduct. His body and mind had become instruments of strategy, but even he understood the limits of one man against an enemy that had mastered war across countless worlds. From the rooftops he saw alien commanders emerging from the shadows. Larger, more imposing, their presence signaling the escalation he had feared. They were not just scouts or drones. They were elite units, leaders of strategy designed to neutralize anomalies like him. Their movements were deliberate, almost arrogant, as though the aliens' assumed superiority was absolute. But the man had learned that even the most meticulous intelligence could be forced into unpredictability. He had only to survive the first moments of engagement, and he could turn the tide in ways they could not anticipate. Below him, survivors took positions along the streets, barricades, and rooftops. Their whispers and nervous gestures were amplified by the sense of imminent catastrophe. Every block held danger, and every corner might hide death or opportunity. The man glanced down at their faces, noting the fear, the determination, the fragile hope that had brought them this far. Their lives depended on him as much as on their own courage, and he could feel the weight of that responsibility pressing down harder than any alien weapon. Suddenly the air changed. A high-pitched hum signaled the approach of a massive alien vehicle, one that dwarfed anything he had seen before. Its armor glinted in the firelight and its weapon systems hummed with lethal intent. The city seemed to shrink under its shadow. Below, survivors froze, realizing the magnitude of what was approaching. Even his enhanced senses could not fully track all of its movements. For the first time, a moment of doubt flickered across his mind, an acknowledgement that the coming battle might push him and everyone he led beyond their limits. He inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the city, the tension of the humans around him, and the weight of the alien gaze from above. Everything converged into a single point of focus. The streets, the debris, the people, the machines, they were all pieces of the battlefield, all elements of the storm about to descend. Every instinct screamed that the moment had arrived, the climax of strategy, of courage, of survival. Every second that passed brought the aliens closer, the stakes higher, and the outcome uncertain. And then a flash of light cut through the darkness, followed by the low rumble of alien engines accelerating toward the city's heart. The man's eyes narrowed, every muscle tensing as he prepared to lead the fight of a lifetime. Every survivor below him tightened grips on weapons, hearts pounding in unison. The battlefield had come alive, and the storm of war was ready to strike. The city held its breath, the aliens advanced with unstoppable precision, and the man stood at the center, the living embodiment of humanity's resistance, knowing that what happened next would define the fate of everything. The clash was imminent. The tension was unbearable. And nothing in the universe had ever prepared him, or the humans he led, for what was about to unfold. Just as the first wave of alien machinery crashed into the streets with bone-shaking force, a sound unlike anything before tore through the city, a low, almost musical resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very concrete and steel. The man's instincts screamed that this was not a normal attack. He crouched behind a partially collapsed wall, eyes scanning the horizon, trying to locate the source. But the vibration spread faster than any weapon he had ever known. Survivors froze mid-step, gripping whatever they could use as a weapon, while alien drones hesitated, their sensors flickering as if confused by the sudden anomaly. From the sky above, the largest alien vessel, the one he had feared most, began to shimmer. Its outline blurred, and then, as if the city itself was twisting reality, it split into multiple smaller forms. Dozens of replicas now hovered over the battlefield, identical in shape, size, and movement. The man realized instantly this was no simple strike. The aliens were experimenting with deception on a scale he had never seen, multiplying their forces in a way that could overwhelm even the most coordinated human defense. Every plan he had prepared now needed recalibration, every strategy tested against a new, more dangerous variable. Amid the chaos, reports began to filter from scattered survivor teams. Entire streets were being overrun in ways that didn't make sense. Where humans had expected one assault, they now faced 3 or 4. Confusion spread quickly, but so did determination. The man shouted commands, signaling teams to fall back into defensive positions, to use improvised traps, to funnel the aliens into narrow corridors. Every second mattered. Every mistake could cost lives. Yet, even as the humans adapted, he sensed something deeper, a hidden pattern in the alien movements, a calculation that hinted at intelligence beyond brute force. Then came the real shock. From a wrecked communication tower, a transmission crackled to life, not from a human device, but through an alien frequency. A voice, cold and mechanical but unmistakably intelligent, spoke in a language he didn't fully understand. And yet, somehow, he felt its meaning, a psychological probe aimed directly at him. You are no longer the anomaly we feared. You are something else. And we will extract what you carry. The words struck him like a weapon. The aliens weren't just attacking, they were targeting him specifically, recognizing that he had become more than human, that the battlefield itself seemed fused with his mind and body. Every move he had made, every tactic he had developed, had not gone unnoticed. The implication was clear. Tonight, he was no longer just defending humanity. He was the prize. Below, survivors rallied, unaware of the transmission but sensing the escalation in alien strategy. Explosions lit up alleyways and drones swooped through shattered streets, firing with relentless precision. The man darted between cover, placing explosives in calculated positions, using the city itself as an extension of his mind. Yet every success revealed another layer of alien adaptation. Shields deployed in seconds. Drones adjusted flight paths mid-strike. What had once been predictable was now dynamic, almost sentient. The battlefield had shifted, and he was being pushed to the edge. Adding to the chaos, a new human subplot emerged. A small group of survivors had discovered an alien artifact hidden beneath the city, a piece of technology that pulsed with energy and emitted strange signals. Some argued it could be a weapon capable of turning the tide. Others feared it was a trap, designed to lure humans into a fatal confrontation. The man had to decide quickly whether to use it, risk it, or leave it buried. Every choice carried weight, every second could decide survival or annihilation. The alien commander replicas moved closer, their synchronized movements now forming a grotesque lattice over the city. They weren't attacking blindly, they were enclosing, isolating, herding the humans like prey into zones designed for maximum destruction. The man realized that the aliens' mastery of war had reached another level. They were combining technology, strategy, and psychological warfare. Survival required not just bravery, but the ability to think faster than an intelligence that had never failed before. And then, in the midst of the unfolding chaos, a tremor rippled through the streets. Something massive stirred beneath the city, beyond the immediate battlefield. Dust and debris fell from buildings, and a low, rumbling growl vibrated through the ground. The man paused, eyes widening. This was unexpected, something he could not have predicted, a hidden variable even the aliens hadn't considered. The city itself seemed alive, or perhaps something beneath it was. Whatever it was, it promised to change the rules entirely, adding yet another layer of danger to an already desperate night. He glanced at the survivors around him, their faces lit by fire and determination. Exhaustion, fear, and courage combined in equal measure, yet none of them fully understood what was coming. The aliens were adapting, the battlefield had multiplied, and an unknown force stirred beneath them. The man tightened his grip on his tools, every sense alert, every thought racing. One truth had become undeniable. The night was far from over, and the war had entered a new, more terrifying phase. Above, the alien replicas shifted in formation, their intent clear. Below, the city trembled. And in the middle of it all, the man stood alive, aware, and ready, but no longer certain if anything could prepare him or humanity for the storm that was about to break. Every plan, every instinct, every act of courage would be tested beyond its limit. The final confrontation was building, the tension unbearable, and nothing in the universe could guarantee survival, not even for a man who had become the battlefield itself. The city trembled as the ground beneath the ruins shifted violently, sending clouds of dust and debris into the night sky. The man stood at the center of it all, every nerve coiled, every sense screaming with awareness. The alien replicas hovered above, their coordinated precision now challenged by the unpredictable force rising from below. The hidden entity beneath the city, whatever it was, had begun to move with unstoppable momentum, creating chaos that even the aliens could not immediately control. For the first time, the battlefield seemed to have its own will, and the man realized he could harness it. He leaped from one broken rooftop to another, signaling survivors to hold their positions and focus fire on strategic points. Every explosion he triggered, every barricade he reinforced became part of a larger, living strategy that the aliens couldn't fully anticipate. The drones that had seemed unstoppable moments ago were caught in the tremors, some crashing into walls, others colliding midair in bursts of sparks. The man's instincts, sharpened by weeks of relentless conflict, guided him with near-perfect clarity. Each move was a calculated step, each decision a gamble that could tip the war toward humanity. Survivors rallied under his direction, their courage ignited by his leadership and the hope that for once they had a chance. Engineers redirected alien energy fields, creating feedback loops that disabled drones. Medics evacuated the wounded through hidden tunnels, while volunteers triggered makeshift explosives that tore through advancing units. The humans were no longer passive victims, they were active participants, each action synchronized with the man's mental map of the battlefield. For the first time, the aliens faced a resistance they could not simply overpower with technology or brute force. The alien commander replicas descended further, realizing too late that the battle had turned. Their attacks became frantic, uncoordinated, and reactive, a stark contrast to the lethal precision they had once maintained. The man exploited every opening, using his understanding of alien strategy against them. He anticipated flanking maneuvers, predicted where reinforcements would arrive, and funneled enemies into traps that seemed almost preordained. With each strike, the city itself seemed to rise in his favor, the hidden entity beneath amplifying the destruction of alien forces while protecting pockets of human survivors. In the heart of the chaos, the man confronted the largest alien unit, the one he had feared the most. It moved like a predator, bristling with weapons and defenses, but he was faster, smarter, and more attuned to the battlefield than ever. Using the tremors and debris as cover, he navigated close enough to plant a makeshift device, a combination of scavenged human technology and alien components. A pulse of energy surged, destabilizing the unit from the inside. Sparks flew, armor cracked, and with a deafening roar the alien collapsed, the force of its destruction rippling across the streets. The battle was reaching its crescendo. Alien forces that had seemed invincible just hours ago were in full retreat or disarray. The humans, inspired and emboldened, pressed the attack, turning streets and alleys into instruments of survival. Every life, every act of ingenuity, every risk had culminated in this turning point. The man, standing amid the chaos, felt the weight of victory and exhaustion at the same time. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though humanity might finally claim a hard-won peace. But then the final twist revealed itself. From the depths of the city, the hidden entity that had aided the humans now fully visible through crumbling walls and cracked streets revealed a form both alien and familiar. It was connected to the invaders, an ancient war intelligence that had lain dormant, observing humanity for centuries. It had tested the man, tested humans, and used the battlefield as a crucible. Its allegiance had shifted only because it recognized a force within him that mirrored its own adaptability, cunning, and a capacity for destruction and creation in equal measure. The man realized the staggering truth. Victory over the immediate alien invasion did not mean freedom. The entity now regarded humanity and him personally as the next experiment. Its consciousness extended through the city, watching, calculating, learning. The battle was over in one sense, but the war for survival had only evolved into a far larger conflict, one that no human could anticipate. Every human survivor felt the shift, the sense that the world had changed irreversibly, and that even triumph came with a cost they could not yet comprehend. As dawn broke, the city lay in smoldering ruins, alien units scattered or destroyed, and survivors gathering in cautious relief. The man stood on the highest rooftop looking down at the streets, the hidden entity beneath the foundations and the horizon beyond. Humanity had survived the night, had resisted an invader that had mastered war, but in doing so, they had awakened a presence far older, far smarter, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The humans cheered softly, tears mixing with soot and ash, but the man remained silent. Every instinct told him that the fight was far from over. The battlefield had changed, the rules had shifted, and the very definition of what it meant to survive was now in question. And as he turned to guide the survivors to safety, a pulse of energy from beneath the city echoed through his body, a reminder that the war and the test was not finished. The night had ended, but the challenge of surviving against forces that saw life as a variable, a weapon, and a puzzle had only just begun. Humanity had won a battle, but the true war, the one that would define the fate of the species, was waiting, patient and unyielding, in the shadows of the city they had fought to reclaim. The city lay quiet in the aftermath, the fires dying down to glowing embers, and the smoke curling lazily into the sky. Streets once filled with chaos and destruction now held the tentative stirrings of life. Survivors emerged cautiously from shelters, scanning the ruins for friends, family, and anything that could be salvaged. The man moved among them, alert but no longer running, his body tense from weeks of unrelenting conflict, yet his mind already beginning to process what had been won and what had been lost. Humanity had survived not just as individuals, but as a collective, proving that ingenuity, courage, and willpower could stand against even the most advanced forces in the universe. The alien invaders, scattered and broken, retreated into the skies, leaving behind evidence of their technology and remnants of their forces. The hidden entity beneath the city had withdrawn, its consciousness retreating into silence, leaving the humans with both relief and unease. Though the immediate threat had passed, the man understood that this was a reprieve, not a guarantee. The universe had shown that intelligence beyond human comprehension existed, and survival would require vigilance, adaptation, and unity. Small subplots began to resolve as the survivors regrouped. The engineer duo who had set traps in the subway tunnel celebrated quietly, knowing their risks had saved dozens of lives. Medics emerged from hidden infirmaries, tending to those who had endured injuries during the battle. Civilians who had once been paralyzed by fear found themselves empowered, their courage validated by the outcome. Every action, no matter how small, had contributed to the survival of their city, and the man made a point of acknowledging their efforts. In the ruins, human ingenuity had transformed into resilience, and resilience into victory. Among the survivors, there was a growing sense of connection, a fragile but genuine unity that had not existed before the invasion. The man had led them through weeks of relentless pressure, and in doing so, had forged bonds that transcended ordinary human relationships. People who had been strangers learned to rely on one another, to trust in the ingenuity and courage of their peers, and to find hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The battlefield had tested not just their strength, but their humanity, and in emerging alive, they carried forward the knowledge that cooperation and determination were as formidable as any weapon. As the man moved through the city, he surveyed the damage and noted what could be rebuilt. Homes, schools, and hospitals would take months, perhaps years, to restore, but the foundation of human resilience had been established. Communities were already organizing, scavenging resources, and preparing for the long road ahead. Even the alien technology left behind could be studied, repurposed, or adapted, a symbol of both the danger that had passed and the possibilities that now lay before them. The man's mind catalogued each detail, planning for the future even as he allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Amid the triumph, there were lessons hard-learned. Human life was fragile, and even the bravest actions came with a cost. Survivors mourned those who had fallen, honoring their sacrifice with silent gestures and careful remembrance. The man himself carried scars both visible and hidden, but he knew that those scars represented more than pain. They were proof of endurance, proof that humanity could survive forces that had seemed unbeatable, and proof that one individual could indeed turn the tide in ways the universe had not anticipated. The alien presence, though withdrawn, remained a memory that would shape the future. The hidden entity beneath the city had tested humanity, and the man understood that they had passed that test, but only partially. The universe was vast, and intelligence beyond human comprehension would continue to observe, adapt, and challenge them. Yet the humans had discovered something critical. They could adapt, they could innovate, and they could fight back against even the most formidable foes. That lesson would echo far beyond the ruined streets of their city, shaping the way humans faced an uncertain universe. As dawn broke fully, the city seemed to breathe again. Survivors moved with cautious purpose, salvaging, repairing, and reclaiming their streets. The man stood atop a partially destroyed skyscraper, looking down at the people he had helped guide through the storm. He felt the weight of exhaustion and the spark of hope intertwined. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge yet and had endured. They had discovered the power within themselves to resist, to adapt, and to prevail. In the quiet aftermath, the man realized that the story of survival was far from over. The universe would continue to challenge them, but they had learned their own strength. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and unity could defy even the most advanced invaders. And in that knowledge, they found the seeds of a new beginning. The city, scarred but alive, stood as a testament to human resilience. Survivors gathered, shared stories, and rebuilt what they could, carrying forward the lessons learned in fire and chaos. And the man, the one who had become the living battlefield, looked to the horizon, knowing that humanity had not just survived, humanity had proven that it could rise against any odds. The war had tested them, the aliens had challenged them, and the unknown had loomed, but the human spirit endured, ready to face whatever the universe would throw next. And so, amid the ruins and the fading smoke, humanity began to reclaim its world, not as victims, but as survivors, innovators, and warriors of its own destiny.